everybody. Thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting. I see there are a lot of old friends here. It's nice to see everybody again. I'm going to speak very briefly a little bit about my experience. The three pillars of the Mediterranean diet: bread, wine, and olive oil, and what that means in terms of tradition and preservation, but also innovation, because the pursuit of excellence kind of covers all of that. I'm not sure that I can figure this one out. Let's see. Okay. I come from a background, I'm a cookbook author and a television cooking show host, so I'm always, my entire career, I've grappled with this idea of what's more important, preserving tradition or innovating? And I think there's no real answer to that. It's really about balance. And at the end of the day, it's about whether something tastes good or not, at least in my opinion. But covering some of the things that are important in this part of the world, bread is definitely the absolute pillar of the Greek culinary experience. It's something that has changed tremendously in the last, I've been in Greece for 33 years. When I first moved here, I remember very vividly my in-laws would go to the bakery in their neighborhood and buy bread that was called politelias, which meant luxury bread. And it was totally bereft of anything nutritional. It was basically completely stripped, white flour, but they were the post-war generation, and to them that was the height of, having arrived at some level of affluence. But oddly enough, in my time as a journalist here, that started to change, and on the bread stage, whole grains started to enter into the vernacular again. Today, it's a completely different situation. We have a very large spectrum of bakeries all over Athens, and the latest trend is this bakery here in the center of the city, not too far from Syntagma, called 72 Hours, which refers to the length of time that the bread is proofed. The bread is, I think, something like 14 or 15 euros a kilo. So it's quite a change from, this is country bread that is now taken on a very elitist, let's say, aura, something that my in-laws would probably never have thought of purchasing, but that my 24-year-old son loved, and actually asked me, "Mom, where'd you get this bread? It was great." So there's this, I think, this interesting balance between this sort of cycle that happens in all of the traditional pillars of the Mediterranean and the Greek diet. And these are just some images of modern and more traditional bread bakeries. Wine is a whole other issue. I can't obviously touch on that in any great length because we have two very special wine experts here today, Stelios Boutaris and Konstantinos Lazarakis. But I come from a very small place called Ikaria, which you mentioned earlier. And this is an island, I think in some ways it's really representative of what's happened in Greece and what's happening almost everywhere throughout the country now. We're kind of on the last part of that frontier. These are images of very, very ancient winemaking techniques that are still in existence. So wine that's buried, that's aged in amphora in the ground, we still sometimes step on the grapes with our feet. It's really fun. But now there are 3 or 4 wineries on the island that bottle wine and that are, have advanced quite a bit. But from my perspective, as somebody who tells the story of this sort of thing and brings people to the island, to experience what I think is authentic, it is always a balance between, do I take them to step on grapes with their feet? And will they be sort of, will they feel that that's unsanitary in some way or somehow unsavory, or will they enjoy it? Most of the times they enjoy it, but they also enjoy the advances and they enjoy the, sort of the evolution of that and a really nice wine with a beautiful, beautiful scenery. The idea of balancing tradition and innovation is something that extends, I think, to every aspect of our experience here in Greece. For a visitor to this country, I think people come, in my experience, people come to Greece. I think I read recently that Greece was voted the most hospitable country on earth. And I can attest to that because it's something that I see in the people that I meet who come to Ikaria for cooking classes, and also in the response to people, even from the show and through the books. It's just this idea that we have this embrace of the table, and the table is the venue for communicating every aspect of the human experience. And people really do react to that. It's something that we've lost, I think, in more Western industrialized countries, but somehow in Greece we're still holding on to that, luckily. This is just my idea of humor. Just the three pillars of the Mediterranean diet. Wine, olive oil on the left in a very, very traditional setting. This is actually not too far from here. It's on the other side of the Peloponnese, outside of Sparti. In a resort that brings people also for this olive oil experience in the very, very traditional way. Bread is one of not only is it a daily food in Greece, but it's also very symbolic and ritualistic food. And this is just something from my village on the 15th of August, which is a big holiday here. And on the left, the scientists in the room might recognize Theoklis Zaoutis. He'd kill me if he knew I had this picture up there. He was the former head of the Greek equivalent of the CDC, but he's a fellow Icarian. So you can see where wine plays a role both in symbolism and in everyday life. I'm sorry, that's my New York humor coming through there. And this, I think I'll end here because this is, I think, a really good example. It's not exactly bread, but it's a little bit on the bready side. It's something that everybody in this room probably recognizes, which is the starting point of one of the most iconic Greek dishes, one of the major food exports of this country to the rest of the world, which is spanakopita. And in talking about tradition, one of the things that I've always thought was a very interesting process, and I saw this as a food journalist here too. I lived through 33 years of incredible transformation in Athens in every aspect of the food world, and it was really interesting to document that. Spanakopita is a great example. It is something that is enclosed, let's say, in bread, but it's also something that has gone through enormous change at the hands of creative chefs and at the hands of entrepreneurs in Athens, at least from my experience. So here are just a couple of images of something very traditional on the bottom, and then a spanakopita focaccia, which is at a place in a neighborhood called Exarchia, which was the sort of, let's say, village or East Village of Athens, very interesting neighborhood politically that has now gone through tremendous gentrification. And this is from a place called Black Salami, which the locals in the neighborhood who've been there for 40 years disparage because it's too expensive for them. But the younger people in the neighborhood gravitate to because it's very hip. Then we have a spanakopita mac and cheese. These are just things that I've seen around town and have recreated in my own kitchen. A spanakopita grilled cheese, spanakopita arancini, and a spanakopita salad. So this is, I think I want to leave this discussion and segue into bread, wine, and olive oil, because this, I think, tells a story that is applicable to all three aspects, all three pillars of the Mediterranean and the Greek diet. How do you express tradition? How do you hold on to tradition? How do you keep tradition from being stagnant? How do you evolve without, let's say, betraying your own soul? I think that's a big question. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. I'll introduce Jaime Lillo first, who is the executive director of the International Olive Council. Sitting next to him is an old friend, Tassos Kyriakidis, assistant professor in the School of Public Health at Yale, Konstantinos Lazarakis, a master of wine, and Stelios Boutaris, a very old friend, even though we don't look it, who I've known for pretty much, his family got me into this business in a way. So we're going to have an interesting discussion. I think, Jaime, why don't you come up first? Thank you. I hope I didn't ramble too much. But, yeah.
Well, good afternoon. I hope you are finding this conference as exciting and inspiring as I've been doing. I've been listening all morning carefully to amazing speakers and taking notes and inspiring comments. And I will try to summarize where is the olive food system, olive oil, olive trees in this coming from tradition. We've been listening a lot this morning about Mediterranean diet, but also looking forward to the future and innovation. And I would like also to look at the recently released report on how to feed the world in a healthy and sustainable manner, and how the olive trees and olive culture can contribute to that. So this is not my this is not my presentation. So that I don't know if you can check. This is our Tassos, but I can start presenting that coming from the International Olive Council. For those who are not aware, this is an intergovernmental organization created under United Nations auspices in 1959. So it's more than 65 years. Yes, this is good. This is the headquarters of the International Olive Council in Madrid, and our mission is to promote sustainable cultivation of olive trees through the international technical cooperation, enhance the quality of the products, mainly olive oil and table olives, and facilitate trade. And we are doing that mainly around international standards and international technical and scientific cooperation. Okay, where are we in olive oil world? We in the last, from the early 90s today, we have doubled the olive oil production in the world from 1.5 million tons to 3 billion tons. This is around almost 2% only of the global vegetable oils consumption in the world. So still a lot of room to grow. And I would like to start saying that in the olive world, in the Mediterranean producer countries, thinking about producing 3 million tons one decade ago was like, wow, this is going to be very difficult to sell this oil. We're going to be with a lot of problems with such a big production, and we are in the opposite. If we don't have today 3 million tons to serve the world, we are facing troubles with prices, as we've seen a couple of years ago. So this increase of demand cannot be explained with the work done and presented this morning. So I would like to recognize the incredible contribution to the researchers and to explain to people that olive oil is healthy in the Mediterranean diet, has shifted the consumption of olive oil over the world. That needs to be recognized, and otherwise we cannot understand the general trends. My first point is that the olive tree comes from more than 60,000 years cultivation in the olive basin, but it's not anymore a Mediterranean crop. We see today that the circles are production of olive oil around the world. So you see that, of course, the center of gravity remains in the Mediterranean basin, but you see production in the 5 continents: Australia, South America, North America, California, China, Japan. In all the places we can produce olive oil, and this is getting more and more interest, which is, in my opinion, we discuss this a lot. This is good news. We are making more diversified the offer, more strength. We are diversifying the risk of climate change, and we are growing in diversity and production capacity. And this is, in my opinion, good news, because also where there is production, people start to understand the product better and better. If we look to the same graphic in consumption, we see that, okay, now we see that the circles are growing. 2 years ago, United States was consuming more olive oil than Spain. And this is incredible. This is also related to the work done, and people, particularly since pandemic, paying more attention on eating in a healthy way, and looking for healthy options, that they are starting to discover olive oil. But we also see in Canada, in Brazil, in Australia, in China, growing interest. So we can say olive oil was at the center of the Mediterranean diet, but it's already advancing in the planetary diet or in the global diet. There is more and more interest of consuming olive oil, not only the Mediterranean countries. That was one of my main first point. And if we look to the future, and I think this is a macro trend of consumption. What are the consumers looking for in the future? And it's not far away from the main concerns. People want to eat healthier. People is growing they want to be conscious about the planet and the environmental impact. They want to have an experience. They want to know, enjoy the food, and they want to make it simpler. So we have very good, let's say, perspective to continue gaining consumers around the world. And I will also, when we were discussing about the politicians and how to put science and politicians together, I think politicians care about what people care. So if we conquer the consumers, if people wants to really eat healthy and sustainable, politicians will follow. That's I think the rest. But that was one of the thoughts from previous discussion. Anyhow, I'm not going to develop about olive oil and health. This has been extensively for people much better than I explained to the public today. I just wanted to briefly mention the celebration of the 30th anniversary of the famous pyramid. It was, we had the honor to put together many of the people here present today and explain the new findings of how this Mediterranean diet is still active and is still contributed to the health. We are trying to in collaboration with Professor Miguel Angel from Navarra and Harvard, to follow what in the Olive Health Information System. I invite you to follow, to put together every evidence published on olive oil, table olives, and health in our website. And we are collaborating with the Culinary Institute of America. It's not only about being healthy, it's about eating, it's about enjoying food, it's about being delicious. And I think the work done with plant-forward kitchen or plant-rich diets and how to make it delicious and enjoy is part of the driver to conquer the future consumers and our contribution to feeding the world, not only in healthy and sustainable, but also delicious manner, and we are proud to do that. This is something we were discussing before, and how when we were talking about excellence and what is next. I think we need there is work to be done in the restaurants. There is a positive narrative to be constructive when we talk about different origins, varieties, pairing food with olive oil, and group of experts, international group of experts of tasting that we are hosting in the IOC last year released this guide to, they call it hedonic tasting. So it's not about tasting to see if it's extra virgin or not. It's about tasting to enjoy it, to find the flavors, to pair it with food, and to follow somehow the richness in restaurants and food service and hospitality. That is something, one of the challenges we see ahead. Now I would like to move to the environmental aspects, and this is also coming from the previous. When we talk about food systems, and they say, okay, food systems are wrong. Okay, not all of them. We need to look at them carefully, and when we look about olive trees, we have more than 11 million hectares of olive trees acting as managed as a cultivated forest. So it is a great opportunity for biodiversity. It's a great opportunity to conserve our soil, and it's a great opportunity to fight against climate change, because it's not only about reducing CO2, but the olive trees are sequestering CO2 from the atmosphere. We are in working with with Olivares Vivos, also with environmental NGO, SEO BirdLife, amazing results of how can increase biodiversity with olive trees, how to promote better practices to increase the capacity of sequestration of CO2 or maintain the soils, or also, of course, to maintain and use the genetic resources in international collections preserved by the International Olive Council. It's part of the future, and we're working very closely with other scientifics in that world as well. Basically, the main challenges there is to adapt the cultivation to climate change, and this is not a minor challenge. We know that climate change is a big reality, and particularly in the Mediterranean region, and we've seen the impact already in the olive oil production. But we have an incredible resilience tree, the olive tree. You can find it growing in the desert. You can see olive trees growing for thousands of years and still giving fruit. So it's about better understanding the interaction with environment, with soil, and genetics to give the tree the possibility to adapt into the climate. But there is also a role. Since 2 years ago, the International Panel on Climate Change recognized that agriculture is not only about reducing emissions. Agriculture can also contribute to capture CO2 from the atmosphere. And olive trees, permanent crops, and in particular olive tree, is in a privileged position. We made a first preliminary study, and producing of 1 liter of virgin olive oil is sequestering more than 10 kilos of CO2 from the atmosphere. This is average figures, but 1 hectare of olive trees is sequestering around 4.5 tons of CO2 over the year from the atmosphere. So when we talk about, food systems are part of the problem, yes, some of them, intensive production of meat and others, but we have a plan with very little water in very poor soils can provide, and I take those words from a dinner with Mr. Wallet, that maybe the healthiest calories we can produce to provide to people from this ancient tree. So that was my time, and just to conclude, olive oil is coming from ancient diet and a lot of tradition, but it's also part of the future challenge of how to feed a global, a growing population in a healthy and sustainable manner, and doing it in a delicious way. So thank you all for your attention.
Good afternoon. First, thank you to the organizers for inviting me. I've been following this conference for many years. This is the first time I'm attending, so thank you for inviting me. Now that the element of surprise is gone, my slide shows the title. Lux in Veritas is the motto of my university, but I'm trying to add the last 2 words, et oleum. It's a hard battle, but I'm trying. So I'm going to share some thoughts and activities we've done on our campus, sort of going from the global to the more local, in bringing this theme forward of the Mediterranean diet and traditions forward, and how we're thinking of moving it in the future. I want to echo Diane's comment about tradition and evolution, or innovation and innovation. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. And what we're trying to do here in the examples you're going to see is tying those 2 concepts together. So I'm going to start with what I call the bottom line up front. The main message here is we're all here to talk about Mediterranean diet yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I'm going to walk you through how it started, what we're doing at Yale, how it started. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what we've done and what our thoughts are going forward. Obviously, this is not work just of mine. I was given a platform to play on with Yale Hospitality and people that some of you know here to do all this kind of thing with their students, and echoing on Natasha's sort of idea of how do we translate the science and in a way that students, in this case, understand and embrace it. So how it started, when I was talking to Diane, we go back since 2006. This was the first event we did at, we did at Yale through the Hellenic Studies program. Out of a whim, I talked to the director of the Hellenic Studies program. I said, we got to do something about Mediterranean diet. What do we want to do? It was a series of panels. We brought anywhere people from like the bench scientists to chefs on panels to talk about how you think about food, how you think about food and its impact on health and policy. Fast forward many, many years later through a couple of things that we had to work on, and this is reality that a lot of you know. This is the reality of olive oil consumption in the US, not a lot compared to other countries, barely 1 liter per person per year. But as Jaime said, the market is growing. And how is that happening? A lot of things like this, messages go out, and we try to capture that and see how we can implement it in our little microcosm of 10,000 students on campus. And the community, obviously, not just the students. So in a short 6 years, when we started looking at our data, we managed, this is data from 23-24, to go from 1 to about 6.5 liters per person per year on campus. That's almost a 650% increase over a short period of time. I still want to get higher than that. And no, we do not have them in the water fountains. Olive oil is not running in the water fountains. I thought about it, but that was turned down. So how did we do it? That's one afternoon I called, many of you know Rafi Taherian, who has retired last year with Yale Hospitality, and I said, Rafi, we got to do something with our students. What do you want to do? Well, there's this new space that you guys renovated. It's a nice little bar. We can make an olioteca. Let's start with 20, 30 people and see who shows up. Well, people did show up, and we started tasting olive oil, talking about health, just in a very casual, at the end of the day, kind of Thursday afternoon, and see where it goes. And it was, they asked me, how long do you want? I said, give me 3 hours, give me 5. I'm not counting time. As long as the students are there, I'll stay. So we had it. The first year we had 20, 25 people, a few in the wait list, and as you can see, because I'm a numbers person, I'm like, but is it working? So people showed up and they wanted to be there. So the wait list started growing up, and I said, well, why don't we open to bigger crowds? So now we have about 100 people every time with 200-300 on the wait list. So it's growing, people are liking it. The advantage is that we have students for 4 years, they're captive, they're not going anywhere, so we can do this over and over and over. So again, is it working? Do people like it? And you can see we asked them, we sent them surveys, and they responded very positively. Some of them had no idea that olive oil had this impact, not only on the health, but the gastronomy, how food tasted different. Building on that, we said, okay, let's bring together something that's happening here, science, growers, because without the industry, we don't have anything to talk about, operators, food people, and consumers. So we started having these events where we would bring people of all these different diverse backgrounds to think and talk and challenge themselves in thinking about food. Not just from the health, but also from culture and history. So when this place was being renovated, I said, I have an idea for the first event we're going to do. We're going to do a 5-course sit-down dinner. I'm going to revive the ancient Greek cuisine and find writings from ancient Greek literature, and I'm going to turn to a chef and say, here, execute this 5-course dinner. They looked at me, I was crazy. I said, it's going to work. So we tried to do that and brought music from the School of Music. We had a 5-course dinner, and every plate that was coming out, the chef would talk about the gastronomy, and I would talk about the historical health and culture implications of that dish that you're eating. It's not something, the ingredients were not from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, thousands of years ago. So we kind of brought forward those old ideas and ingredients and concepts. We started with an olive oil tasting, and this is, it's not like the Palace of Nestor. but it's okay, not too bad. These are known as commons, a big facility in the center of campus. So we had the art of gastronomy because it is an art. Chefs are artists. So I would give like the ingredients, and then he would execute the dish. And then I would come back and talk about the health and the culture and the historical context of that dish that was in front of them. So 4 hours later, everybody was still there because they wanted to hear more and engage in this conversation. They had to kick us out because it was almost 11 o'clock. But then what do we do from here? How do we think about the sustainable framework to bring this forward in a way that students like it? And obviously Yale Hospitality is going to be okay with it, and because I can propose a lot of crazy things, but we have to sort of balance those thoughts and ideas. So in thinking about this, and this is something I presented at the Gastronomy and Culture Symposium that we co-organized this past June at the University of Napoli. How do we integrate the traditional Mediterranean with modern cuisine? Things are evolving. We have to admit that. People are looking for new things. So how do we bring that together, create this culinary continuum by embedding those traditional Mediterranean ingredients and different interpretations, different ways of thinking about it into contemporary practices, with the impact being we're going to preserve the tradition, but it might look a little bit different. It's okay. They're not mutually exclusive. How about documenting and digitizing these recipes? I know a lot of people have been doing that with the objective of ensuring the preservation and transmission of those ideas and the heritage that we have, again, Mediterranean being defined in all sorts of ways, but now we have technologies that we can use. How do we capture that? Technology is not always bad, it's not always good, but how do we harness the power of that with the impact being enhancing the accessibility, now that we have a tool, a platform that everybody can access to get the message even out there. I'm working with students in a small community. How do we go beyond that? And last but not least, how we explore and promote the experience of the Mediterranean culinary sort of tradition, to highlight and promote the diverse culinary traditions. We've all heard different things about Mediterranean diet and what it means, depending on where you're coming from, how you interpret it, what region of the Mediterranean you're talking about, with the impact being how to boost that cultural appreciation. Because at the end of the day, food, and in particular Mediterranean food, is, I think, the biggest connector of people. You might not be talking the same language at the same table, but you're enjoying the same food. So let's use that culinary sort of experience to build on that. So with that, I'd like to thank Rafi Taherian, Yale Hospitality, recently retired, and my colleague Vasilis Vasiliou. We're trying to put together a program, a center at the School of Public Health, focusing on olive oil and the impact, or the olive tree, I should say, and its products, and the impact on health and planetary health. Thank you.
I have to thank the masterminds as well as the organizations behind this conference and symposium that have the guts to have not just one, but two people, Stelios and myself, that make a living out of wine, like voicing their stance towards Mediterranean diet. And also we have a breakout session at the Deutsche. All these glasses going up and down and on, touching them, whatever, sustainability. And having a breakout session that even you can drink some wine. I don't know if you notice it, but there is a big war on wine. You know, I'm serving a glass of wine to someone and I feel like I'm getting a loaded gun on the table. And I'm saying, have you been doing your Chekhov homework? If you see a loaded gun on chapter 1, you know what to do with that on chapter 3. War on wine, zero tolerance, no level that is risk-free. Wine is alcohol and all that jazz. Well, we have war on beef, war on ultra-processed food. I'm all in for that. We are having now war on coffee. And all these wars, well, the initial war that has been fashioned all the other wars was the war on smoking. That was declared hands down a victory, and then e-cigarettes and vaping walk in the room. Go and check the young people's rise on these alternative smoking habits. It's frightening. And just to have an idea where the headlights are aiming at, the rise of psychedelics. If 20 years ago someone was saying that people talk about the legalization of psychedelics, I would think psychedelic music, and then I would say, no, stick to illegal. Psychedelic music has to be illegal. Now, weed, cannabis. I mean, it's very fitting to discuss that in Kalamata, I think. For non-Greeks, if weed was wine, you are in Burgundy. You are a spliff, a joint away from Romane Conti, okay? That's the case. 24 states in US legalize marijuana. Washington, D.C. is working on that, so it will be completely legal in a bit to have a joint in the yard of the White House, have the president, the POTUS guy, having a sort of a spliff somewhere, totally legal, right? Right, okay. Then, again, talking about the White House, talking about, until recently, very frequent visitor, Elon Musk. You know, 4 years ago, my, at that time, 14-and-a-half-year-old son was saying that, you know, Elon Musk is using ketamine. Okay? We had, I think in the Congress, we had 5 bills passed in 2019 that relate to psychedelics. Now, last year we had, if not more than at least 30. And when we talk about psychedelics, I'm talking about ecstasy, things like that. Google it. Don't trust me, Google it. There is a growing number of scientists and legislators that think that we should legalize quite a few of these things, with a very deep understanding that paying 25 euros and have a dose of ecstasy will get us, all of us, going until the end of the symposium, and I'm talking about tomorrow afternoon. And tell me conservative, but I would be less worried when my son, grabs a glass of wine rather than having LSD. In Greece, we say pharmako, which means the medicine. We say pharmaki, meaning poison, and we say the difference between pharmako and pharmaki is the dose. I would say also it's the mode of consumption. And we had some amazing people talking about the process of enjoying food and wine within what we call, what most of you call, Mediterranean aspect of dining together. I'm not an expert. Of course, I can talk about the obvious things like consumption in moderation, about the fact that you don't consume alcohol on an empty stomach. It's not like eating now and then going out on the pub to get completely washed by alcohol and all that. But I like to see the broader picture. Mediterranean diet. Dishes together. That goes deep into our mammalian souls. Eating together. Remember the lions together munching on a giraffe. Eating together from the same plates, touching, really connecting. Where a vegan, a vegetarian, a pescatarian, and obviously, like myself, omnivorous human being can be together without being conceptualized, stigmatized. At the same time, we could think more things, like like inviting people to your place. Do you know how many places around Western world inviting people to your place is out of question? Having generations that have nothing to do, spending time together cooking. Okay, I'll tell you a very deep personal experience. It's going to be a bit tricky. After my mother passed away, my father, who used to be a chef, had his favorite pastime to cook for his only grandchild, our son. Our son's favorite food was gogis. Gogles, cholla, it's like a gnocchi kind pasta. His favorite grandfather's food was gogis. My father had a stroke, quickly passed away. He was lucky in that regard. And after like about a month, we discovered a portion of his gogis prepared for his grandson in the freezer. And I saw my son sitting down, consuming, knowingly for the last time, his favorite dish. That really put a completely different notion of what food can be. We talk about a six, anima sana and corpore sano. There are two misreadings on that. People say a healthy mind and a healthy body, and they think that we should really get our bodies sorted out to accommodate for a sort of healthy mind. The first misreading is that they don't think the symbiotic relationship, think of autoimmune diseases, like a healthy mind is prerequisite for a healthy body. And then the second misreading is the translation, anima is not mind, is psyche, psyche. What's the relationship between mind and psyche? For me, I mean, look at Greeks. We say nous, psyche. It's something deeper. Psyche is mind plus. And in that plus is where wine exists. It is playing around with our emotions, with our highly elevated sensation of being together, eating together, drinking together is. When we enjoy a glass of wine, we're not really pathetic, surprisingly suicidal morons. We are not craving, we are desiring, we are worthy of that space between mind and psyche. Maybe we are defined by that plus between nous and psyche. Thank you.
Speak after Konstantinos. You know, maybe I should let him speak for another 10 minutes, and because I don't have so many interesting things to say. That's like Konstantinos. Well, anyway, you know, when Diane told me that we're going to do this panel, I think it's the first time we'll do a panel together and talk about evolution and preservation, I said, wow, that's very, very interesting. You know, our motto at Kyriani is that, you know, innovation builds tradition. And I strongly believe that innovation and tradition are the two sides of the same coin. One brings the other, kind of. Anyway, I have some notes here, and I want to make sure that I don't skip everything, so I might wear my glasses. You know, this is a concept that, that we try to live on, and you know, in our business, it's a marathon. You know, it's not like you know. My father always said that you plant a vineyard for your grandson, really. So it's always nice to look really, really ahead of time. So you always need to make. You may have to make sure your tradition is there, but at the same time you have to innovate to be always modern. Anyway, I'll tell you a few examples. In the 80s, in Santorini, this is, mind you, a 3,000-year-old vineyard. They used to harvest always after September 15th, to Stavru. It was a big holiday at that time. And when my father went there, he was actually At that time, he was divorced with my mother, and he was trying to get her back. So my mother was in Santorini with some friends. So he went there to try to get her back. But he suddenly realized that this is a big vineyard, Santorini. So he spent some time there, and when he said, okay, I'm going to build a winery here. What they did at that time, they would harvest late. So what he decided to do is to harvest early, in early August. Everybody was like, what? Early August? We don't harvest in early August. We're still in the beach in early August. Well, you know, this is what we're going to do. So, and everybody was telling him, nobody will bring you grapes. Well, you know, how do you say it in English? I said, okay, I'll double the price of the grapes. So everybody brought these grapes to him. And now, with this little innovation, we have the wines of Santorini of today, which are regarded a big tradition these days. You know, the wines of Santorini are world known. The Assyrtiko of Santorini is spearheading the Greek wine revolution, and it's the variety that everybody knows from Santorini. Similarly, in the 90s then, he started planting Sauvignon Blanc in Amindion, in the north of Greece, and Syrah in Naousa. Everybody was like, why are you planting these varieties? It wasn't even legal at that time. It wasn't allowed. There was no PGI or PDO for these wines. So he planted them, and 30, 40 years later, Sauvignon Blanc from Amindion is actually, you know, cold climate Sauvignon Blanc, as we say, is actually one of the best Sauvignon Blancs in the world. And everybody knows Amindion for its Sauvignon Blanc. So, you know, you always have to look forward and try to innovate, you know. Same thing in Santorini, you know, it's really funny, and you know, I'm going to go into a little bit of wine tourism, which is very fashionable, and actually, I believe one of the things that we have to invest in the next years. In Santorini, we opened the winery there back in the 90s, and we said, okay, we have all these tourists coming. Why not have a wine tasting for them? I think at that time, wine tourism was always in Rheines and in the German Weinstrasse, you know. So we opened the winery. People can come and taste. Everybody's saying, why? Who's going to come and taste wine? Everybody wants to go to the beach. So we opened the wine, and also we did one more thing. And this is where my culinary thing comes in. I'm just only wine people. We said, we're going to have also 8 dishes. What kind of dishes? Well, we're not going to do the dishes that the tavernas do. We're going to do the dishes that people in Santorini at home eat. Fava, salad with capers, leaves, even preserved fish. You know, well, this is a wine killer, really. However, we had it to make a point. Because in Santorini at that time, there were a lot of people on the sea. So it was a poor island up to the 70s, 80s Santorini, not like today. So we brought up these dishes that were non-existent in the island, the tavernas, but only at home. Another innovation. Now this innovation is a tradition. You go to Santorini, everybody has fava, everybody has caper leaves, everybody has all these dishes. What we're doing now today. Now it's not a tourist destination at all. We open a restaurant, again, you know, wine and food, you know, a pair made in heaven. And, okay, let's see what we're going to do to make something different. How we're going to innovate? Well, we went back. We planted about 1,000 olive trees around the vineyard in order to have our own olive oil. We planted, we have our own chicken, so we have eggs. And of course, we have a 2-acre garden, vegetable garden, so we have always fresh vegetables to cook. Now, is this really something new? Well, we know we did something traditional, and we tried to innovate it, trying to take the old recipes and make them into modern food. And all of a sudden, people come to eat at the winery. And of course, the last example, which I want to dwell into it, which is, I might be crucified, Constantine, if I say these things. You know, low intervention wines. I do not dare to say the word natural, right? You know, what's happening there? You know, I mean, all these young winemakers, you know, they wanna take the old way, the traditional way of making wine, and bring it to the market. And they do, very, very popular. There are places today that sell only natural wines. I don't go to these places, sorry. Now, do these guys innovate? They do in a way. However, if they want to be here for the next day, I think they have to find ways to not just look back, but take the tradition, take something that we have, take the heritage, and bring it to the next level. Yes, I totally think that you know, we'll try our vineyard to be organic. We try to use the least pesticides we can. On the other hand, we may have to make a good product. Anyway, just to sum up, tradition, heritage, vintage, preservation, these are all really cool terms. But if they are used only for their own sake, then we go nowhere. This is the base. These notions are the basis for innovation, and hence tradition. Thank you.
Thank you, Stelio. I think I have a few questions for you. We have time for that, I think. I guess my first question is for you, Jaime. As the leader of the International Olive Council, what are you doing to help producers around the Mediterranean? Pretty straightforward question. You know, particularly in terms of promotion, international exposure.
Yeah, I mean, we are, of course, I mean, in several aspects. No, this is hard to summarize, but basically we work at the cooperation of spreading best practices, we conserve and we share research from the genetic of the plants. We have international collections providing right plants to respond to the challenges of climate change and more other things. We work on spreading best practices. We do a lot of training, international conference. We give grants for farmers and associations to participate, and we work a lot in scientific cooperation between researchers, extension service, policymakers around the olive sector. We've been doing a lot of promotion and education on consumers. That was more extensively done in the past with huge campaigns in the US and around the world, explaining what is the olive oil, inviting people to taste the olive oil. And we are more now very much focused also on facilitating trade. We've seen that is very much globally trade, and we need a common language to be sure that what is an extra virgin is the same for everybody. We define parameters, method of analysis, laboratories recognized all around the world, trying to ensure that every person who opens a bottle of extra virgin is a real bottle of extra virgin and they have a good experience. And we are also collaborating with the chefs and the culinary institutes like the CIA to not only to bring the experience to the tables, to the consumer all around, in the way of collaborating with a rich plant. Like I think I remember from a previous conference when Antonio was saying why people eating more vegetables in the Mediterranean area is because they cook it with olive oil and they mix it with olive oil, and we think this is something to elaborate and go globally and contribute to feeding the planet. Of course, taking into account farmers here in the Mediterranean region and other regions in the world.
Okay, thank you. Tasso, I have a question for you. What can somebody like me, a cook and a storyteller and a journalist and a writer, learn from your research, your sensory, your exploration of olive oils, your scientific exploration of olive oils? What can you impart to somebody who's not a scientist, to somebody who uses olive oil, who's on the front line actually of using olive oil and sharing it with other people?
So I'll tell you a little story. 2022 September, during our 4th International Yale Symposium on Olive Oil and Health, we had a panel with 3 chefs, and the Greek chef gets up and puts one slide up. His name is Manolis Papoutskakis. He goes, "Chefs have the power." If you think about it, that's true. You go to a restaurant, they can do whatever they want. You're going to eat whatever they cook. So I want to use that, and going back to how do we translate the message from the health perspective as scientists to chefs so they can step forward and talk to everybody who's consuming their food. They have a story to tell, not only through their food and the color on the plate, but we can help pass that message, so it's not coming from a scientist, but it's coming from an artist whose food they're consuming. So I do agree, chefs have the power, so let's give them that power.
I like that. You, I'm saving for last. Stelio. You've been doing this a long time. You grew up doing this. What advice would you give to somebody starting out today? I mean, the Greek wine world has changed dramatically since since we've known each other. So somebody starting today, that you mentioned to me when we were talking earlier that your dad opened Kyriani when he was 56.
Right.
So if I were 26 and wanted to start a winery.
Well, if you think about it, today there are more than 1,600 wineries in Greece. If you go back 10 years, maybe 15, there were 600, something like that. If you go back in the 80s, there were less than 100, right? So there's definitely been a big wine in Greece is a great story. I mean, I really think that even after the crisis, sometimes I say that the crisis did good for us Greeks, but the Greek wine industry really rebounded after the 15 crisis. So all of a sudden you have all these young guys, and you have this new model that did not exist in Greece before. And actually, this is something that we actually find a way to also make it official. It's the grape grower becoming a winemaker as well. Now, this is not something new for Spain, Italy, Portugal, Austria, whatever. But in Greece, it didn't exist. You had the co-ops and the big wineries, and you had on the other side the grape growers. Now, what happened is that now you have this new model where the new generation, there was a guy who had 10 hectares in Nemea producing 100 tons of grapes and giving, 10 here, 10 there, 80 to the local co-op. Now, his son, a little bit more educated, a little bit more forward-looking, he said, okay, well, maybe I'll try and make 1,000 bottles, and maybe 5,000 bottles then, and then 10,000 bottles. So we have a little bit more healthier model now, where there are some grapes that go to the co-op, some grapes will go to another winery, but he will also make his own wine and try to sell it under his own name. So he's becoming a little bit like most winemakers are, from the grape to the table, as I say. Now, can everybody do it? No, because you have to be educated, you have to be patient, you have to have a personality that can go out and talk to people. But if there's one word I would say patience. As I said before, grape growing is a marathon, and you do 10,000 bottles and you want to sell them the first year and then the next year again. It's not easy, guys. You really have to go slowly. Focus on your local market. Invest in wine tourism. These are all little things that can bring you a good next day.
Thank you. So, Konstantin, as a soldier, what weapons are you taking to the war on wine? Defensive or offensive?
I think it's a war on more things than wine. I think it relates, I have a lot of doctors and public health people that really sort of try to tuck me away when I start talking about the law of small possibilities and small probabilities. But I think it's a matter of balance, panmetron arison. It's about incorporating things that potentially, don't get me wrong, alcohol is bad. Alcohol can kill you. Alcohol is addictive. Alcohol is something that could cause your family a lot of bad things. Don't get me wrong. It's not like a thing that could not go wrong. But stating that, you have to look around all the other things in life that can be addictive, that can be potentially go bad. There are very few things that can't really. So it's all about a matter of balance. And Greeks, and especially what we have been discussing all along, it is things that relate to balance. I think storytelling is a big thing on wine, and how people rip us off is, for me, one of the biggest advantages of wine. You go to malt whiskey producers or cognac producers, all the structure of portfolios, all the details, even on back labels, all the tasting techniques relate to wine. They're ripped off from the wine world. Even coffee. Oh, no. We've been with the family to Chicago, and in Illinois, you can smoke weed. So I've seen a tasting note of weed discussing terroir and minerality coming from a fantastic terroir of Kalamata, and then having distinct notes of minerality. With climate change, we have the vines go pop in their buds quite early because the winter is finishing early, and the bud burst happens earlier and earlier. And in specific places like Burgundy, you can have frost killing these young buds. So when you have problems like that, producers are lining up heaters within the vineyards to protect or maybe minimize the damage caused potentially by the frost. I've seen on the Financial Times How to Spend It magazine a full ad of Brunello Cucinelli trying to sell their $2,000 cashmere sweaters, discussing some weirdo language about nature, and having a photo of a vineyard in Burgundy with heaters lined up between the vines. Are we joking? Bugger off! That's ours. That's wine. What wine had to do with this? Also, what I think it's very important to understand and speaks volumes about the nature of the wine is that, and that gives wine and several other things around wine hope, is this. Wine is possibly the only form of agriculture that has a conversation with the elites, with the wealthy, with the powerful. You can be a cotton producer and have a chat with politicians, but you never have a meeting with people because they really enjoy your olive oil. You can have power out of the production. You can be the president of the union. So, of course, you will discuss with politicians. It's very rare, I don't know of any incident, that a wealthy businessman enjoying a tomato will invite that tomato grower to its place to sit around and enjoy that tomatoes. Stelios has been dining with the plutocracy and aristocracy of Greece and beyond, not because he has the power or he's, well, he has been the president in several unions, but these people are tuned to the grandeur of wine. Chefs do that, but there is a different distance between creation and product. You have the chef cooking in the sort of kitchen of a billionaire because you must have the cook there to have the food of that chef. Okay? In wine, you can enjoy any wine at your dining table without having Stelios around. Still, people want to have Stelios around. That, again, speaks volumes about the grandeur of wine and also adds a lot of food for thought of how we can add value to the things that we do, how we cultivate the air, how we move on, adding more gravitas to what land can give us.
Thank you. So I think we strayed quite a bit from the three pillars of the Mediterranean diet, bread, olives, and wine, but it was a lively conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. I think we have a little time for questions. Oh, I'm sorry?
We're out of time. We just need to...
Oh, we're out of time. Oh, because it says 8:35 there. Oh, see, that's an Icarian clock. Okay.
We're running behind, so.
Then I thank you very much, and thank you all for a lively conversation.